Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Deacon Derek Walcott, who many may relate to in our parishes in the ministry to youth, in the ministry to men, in ministry to marriages. But most of us may know him on Trinity TV hosting Shepherd's Corner and Breakfast with the Deacon. So, Deacon Derek will present on Loved and Created by God, Youth and the LGBTQ. Welcome, Deacon Derek.
Hi, welcome, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I feel so honored. Even though I feel that this is going to be a tough one coming after Dr. Michelle Cretella. She was amazing.
Thank you
So
for that.
she laid the foundation scientifically for all the presentations which will be coming after. So I want to thank Dr. Michelle. She was spot on.
She covered social
So
media, she covered it. Thank you, thank you.
yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah.
Deacon Derek, I'll let you go straight into your presentation.
Thank you. So let's talk. Let's talk. Loved and created by God, and that's what we're going to be talking. That's what we're going to be doing. So, loved and created by God. I just want to let everybody know the church is a home for all people. She exists to draw hearts to Jesus so that every human being created in God's divine image and likeness might be able to participate in the divine life of God. And that's my opening statement. That no matter who you are, we want you to know that the church is a home for you. And our whole purpose is to draw hearts to Jesus so that you who were created in God's divine image and likeness might be able to participate in the divine life of God. She exists, yes, to draw hearts to Jesus, who is the embodiment of love and mercy, so that every human being created in God's divine image and likeness might be able to participate in the divine life of God out of love. Out of love, she calls all people to live according to God's design for them. What is God's design for you? So that He wants you to know the fullness of life that you were created for. And that's what I want to share with you. God wants you to know the fullness of life that you were created for. Now, our faith calls all of us to treat everyone with respect and kindness. And I can't say this more because so many times, many people within our faith have not treated those who struggle with this dysphoria, who struggle with same sex attraction, with respect and kindness. Because we fail to acknowledge the dignity of the person before us, a person who is truly loved by God. And we need to be compassionate towards those who suffer and literally suffer. And we need to accompany the person. Papa Francis, who I love to quote, is asking us also to accompany marriages. This is the domestic church. And therefore we are called to accompany marriages, accompany families, because yes, it is out of families that we have people with these challenges in their lives. So, how do we do that? And I want to quote Father George Eliot. He says, first, whoever you're speaking with probably knows and loves someone who is confused about their gender. If we speak in an offensive way, it will only make them close themselves to what you are saying. What you're saying is important, but how you say it can make or break the effectiveness of what you want to communicate. So, what do we have to do? Tread lightly. Second, speak the truth. Speak the truth. We should all be kind, but we should not be cowards. And therefore, as young people sharing and speaking with families or speaking with friends who have these challenges, Be kind, but do not be a coward. The church has definitive teaching about gender, and we should clearly and fully say the church's teaching on the issue. Keep in mind that speaking the truth is also an act of love. Many times we feel that, oh gosh, if I speak the truth, I'm not loving the person. But no, speaking the truth is an act of love. We heard Dr. Cretella speak to us so much about what happens when they try to transition and they take all these drugs. Speak the truth. Let them know what will happen. Blew my mind about osteoporosis. And literally, some of the drugs that they take actually were used for castrating pedophiles or rapists. And that's the kind of drug that we are using on people who want to transition. Know the facts. Read what the church has actually said about the topic and stick to that. If you do express your own opinion, make sure your friend knows this is my opinion, not the church's. And don't feel equipped to speak on this issue. I want to encourage you, read the documents released by the Vatican. And I'm going to give Jacqueline my PowerPoint presentation because I'm going with my PowerPoint presentation, but I didn't want it up. I wanted to speak to you and watch you in your face. Read the document released by the Vatican or check out the resources offered by the United States Catholic Bishops' Conference. Distinguish confusion and sin. Many people who are tempted to change their identity are genuinely confused. We heard Dr. Cretella talk about that, and then they wanted to transition back. Don't assume you know what is going on inside that person. That means do not condemn them, but rather help them recognize who they are as loved and created by God. And I can't emphasize more what Pope Francis says. We have to journey with them, right? This is really being our brother's keepers, journeying with those of our friends who are confused, who are depressed, who are anxious about what they're feeling inside. And finally, I want us all to remember this. Stay positive. The Catholic Church's teaching on human sexuality and identity is the most freeing and life-giving teaching out there. Why? Because it is true. Express that positivity in the way you speak about the topic and make sure that the other person knows you are coming from the point of view that you want to help and love people, not just tell them they're wrong. I can't say that more. So let's look at the issue. Dr. Cretella mapped it out for us. The issue of gender ideology is everywhere these days. It is so pervasive that we might forget there was a time not so long ago, in fact, when gender was not on the tip of everyone's tongue. And it's amazing that Emmanuel community should choose this time, yes, on our independence anniversary, to speak about this issue. Those days are behind us. And now it seems everywhere we turn, someone is wagging, or someone is wagging their tongue, someone is waging the latest battle of what I call the cultural wars. Whether it's about jobs, that is, what jobs do women want and what jobs do men want, or co-ed bathrooms, or children being raised as gender questioning so that they can make their own decision in adulthood, or some cacophony over sexual proclivity and liberation. The Western world is inundated with gender theory. I wonder why it's only the Western world, or those countries that are influenced so much by Western culture. And a rapidly increasing number of adolescents have become caught up in the transgender trend. Dr. Cretella showed us Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. A decade ago, less than a fraction of a percent identified as transgender. Dr. Cretella mentioned that. In 2017 and 2018, and this is where I'm looking at what she was saying that I'm more associated with pediatrics. But in 2017 and 2018, studies reported that 2% or 3% of teens identifying as transgender, right? And that is latest studies 2017, 2018. In addition, other researchers describe a social contagion effect, which causes multiple adolescents within a single peer group to identify as transgender or non binary. Somebody that I follow, Abigail Schreier's book, The Irreversible Damage. And she had an amazing interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson. And her book, Irreversible Damage, documents this trend, which with adolescent girls. Young people are being taught in schools, peer groups, and media that, that their identities are self defined and that the body can be manipulated to match their self perception, gender identity. And the most vulnerable young people, those suffering from mental health issues, trauma, abuse, Dr. Cretella talked about autism or other uses, begin to believe the lies peddled on social media. They believe the lies among that they hear among their peers and those pedophiles who want to prey on them, that their feelings of unhappiness or not fitting in prove that they're really transgender. Now, helping these individuals gain a more accurate self perception, and it may mean helping them expand their understanding of what it means to be a woman or a man beyond the stereotypes that pigeonhole people on the basis of interests, personality traits, or appearance. It may mean helping them explore why does it seem so frightening? Why does it seem so awful or inconceivable to embrace their male or female identity as created by God? It may mean helping them address other underlying conditions instead of expecting that transition is the ticket to happiness. We got the facts from Dr. Cretella in terms of transitioning and what has happened in terms of than saying, well, those people who transition, they should be less anxious, they should be less depressed, and so on, and there should be less suicide. What we showed was the reverse. A 2021 Australian study, that's this year, for example, found that 88% of children and adolescents seeking clinical treatment for gender dysphoria, psychological distress over a perceived identity body mismatch, suffered from other mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression. So I just want you to wrap your heads around that. That is this year, yes, in the midst of COVID, this Australian study found that 88% of children and adolescents seeking clinical treatment for gender dysphoria, right, suffered from other mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression. Why? They had high rates of unresolved childhood trauma and loss. Other studies show that transgender identifying adolescents often had other body issues, anorexia, body dysmorphia, and are 2 to 4 more likely to be diagnosed with autism. Again, Dr. Cretella mentioned that. For these teens or young adults who are struggling with other issues, transition becomes the hoped for solution to all their problems. In short, the reasons why a person feels discomfort over his or her identity, they're complex. But one thing we know for sure is that attempting to alter the body to match the distorted self-perception, my friends, is not the answer. So when you're sharing with your brothers, your sisters who are also struggling and they're depressed, they're anxious about, yes, I'm in a male body and I'm really a female, or I'm in a female body and I'm in a male. In fact, it has become increasingly clear over the past few years that gender affirming interventions cause grave harm, especially to adolescents and young adults, and fail to provide the promised benefits. So you see what is happening here, and this pushback that we are getting. It has been proven that when they are gender affirmed, it causes grave harm, especially to adolescents and to young adults, and it fails to provide the promised benefits. But regrettably, a booming gender industry affirms adolescent beliefs in transgender identity. Dr. Kretala talked about great pharma. That's where the money is, right? And then what happens? It fast tracks them towards medical interventions that will permanently disfigure their bodies and destroy bodily functions, including fertility. She spoke about that. And in the past year, countries including Sweden, Finland, and the UK have halted gender affirming medical interventions for teens. But the US gender medicine industry refuses to acknowledge the growing medical concerns and continues profiting from these destructive and exploitative practices. Big pharma, it's big money. I also would like to also think it's also a planned attack on the family. It's a planned attack on the family because it's in the family that children are born, society grows. It is, God said, go forth, increase, and multiply, fill the earth. And there is a huge pushback on that. And Dr. Mark Yarhouse and Doctors Julia and Dr. Julia Sadusky, in their book Emerging Gender Identities, Understanding the Diverse Experiences of Today's Youth, these psychologists were both evangelical and they're clinical psychologists. They offer a wide array of clarifications, distinctions, and pastoral insights based largely on their clinical experience with gender atypical teens. The book begins with the warning to parents and priests and pastors to avoid responding defensively when a teen confides to them that they are gender atypical. A lesson in theological anthropology is not likely to help them get to the root of their discomfort with their identity. And I want to say that in order to be able to listen, understand, and then help the teen, they suggest first learning about the language that the teen is using to describe what he or she is experiencing. So before you jump in with the theology, listen, understand, and help the teen and help that 14, right? Learn their language. Learn the language as they are trying to describe what they're experiencing. They begin with the distinction between dysphoria and emerging gender identities. Gender dysphoria, to which Yarhouse dedicated his previous book, is a neurological condition in which a male perceives himself to be female or vice versa. Variations of this phenomenon have existed, yes, throughout history, and is what most people think of when they hear the word transgender. They emphasize gender dysphoria's neurological basis, and that it ought not to be equated with the willful, rebellious, or wanting to follow trends. So I just want to lay that down for you. So what do we see with emerging gender identities or gender diversity, which include gender fluid, gender queer, agender, and bigender? These are all fairly new concepts which express something beyond one's body to be incongruous with his or her identity. These identities construe gender to be more broad than male and female, thus perceive the male female binary to be a source of oppression. Yes, and that's what they tell us, right? You're oppressing us. These identities find much of their origin in the writings of gender theorists like Judith Butler, which I'm sure Dr. Critella knows. And Yerhouse and Sadusky's historical genealogy of transgenderism provides further clarification, tracing the line from which it was understood to be a result of moral depravity to a pathological condition, and then more recently to a politically charged identity. Planned Parenthood. I don't need to go any further than that. From this historical view, Yarhouse and Sadisky zero in on what they deem a false dichotomy that has emerged in contemporary debates, the increased awareness versus social contagion theories. The former holds that one's gender identity, be it cisgender, trans, or gender diverse, is essential to who you are, and that the recent surge of people identifying as non-cisgender is due to growing awareness and cultural acceptance of the non-cisgender experiences. The social contagion views, view sees this surge of people falsely perceiving their gender identities to be distinct from their bodies as a result of the popularization of trans narratives in the media. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Yarhouse and Sadisky suggest instead of taking into account the multiple layers and factors behind a person's trans identity, to do so, they point to philosopher Ian Hacking's framework known as the looping effect, which considers how changing ideas change people. The looping effect. Changing ideas change people, and how changed people necessitate further changes in ideas. LGBTIQ plus. So people's behaviors change in response to how they are categorized. Reactions may be behavioral or conceptual or affect identity so far as assumptions about the self and the condition are shaped by mental health nomenclatures. This shaping can come from many sources, including mental health experts. I remember the doctor saying, listen, in the United States, it's difficult to really get doctors, psychologists who would be able to help you. Why? Because many of them are forced to by sometimes losing their practices and so on. And so this shaping can come from many sources. Mental health experts who are struggling, broader societal views, and taking for granted realities. So let's deal with the truth. Hacking accounts for 5 factors within a given looping effect: classification, people, institutions, knowledge, and experts. Yarhouse and Sadisky insists that this kind of framework allows parents, priests, counselors to appreciate the way a teen construes his or her experience while also being better able to identify the root cause of the gender incongruity, be it actual dysphoria or other issues. So I want to talk about this framework. This framework also allows important questions to be raised about the authority afforded to medical experts in these matters. Why are so many doctors prescribing gender blocking hormones and sex change surgeries? Something like crowd curation is happening in response to young people navigating their gender identity questions today. Yarhouse and Sadisky point to a rapid change in narratives, first distinguishing cisgender from trans identity, and now from trans to emerging gender identities. Why are so many doctors prescribing gender blocking hormones and sex change surgeries? Follow the money. Experts who might ordinarily be relied on as curators have turned to children with transgender and gender diverse experiences for guidance. Abigail Schreier, she's done the investigation. They are turning to children with transgender and gender diverse experiences for guidance, making these children the curators of their own gender possibilities. If I am the doctor, how come I'm taking your advice? Why am I turning to the children with transgender and gender diverse experiences for guidance? Rather than helping young people to sort through and possibly resolve the lack of congruence between their bodies and perceived identities, doctors are now responding to demands of patients as young teens and under the teens, as if these were transactions between retailers and customers. They propose that many young people who don't perceive themselves to be like other boys or girls are now identifying as trans. Why? Because it is one of the only narratives made available to them to make sense of their experience. Whereas the boy who played with dolls used to be deemed more sensitive than other boys, and the girl who liked rough and tumble play was told that she was a tomboy, they're more likely to hear, and Jackie mentioned it, that they're not a boy or a girl, but perhaps they are really trans or non binary. And I think all of us know people like that. I used to play with dolls, so I just let them know, right? But I also played hockey and everything that went with being football and so on. So, though these could indeed be signs, playing with boys, playing with rough and tumble girls, being rough and tumble, boys playing with dolls, could indeed be signs of gender dysphoria. It's possible that they just happen to have different personalities from the dominant stereotypes of masculinity and femininity. They note that this lack of identification with dominant gender stereotypes can be a source of enrichment for others, for it forces us to question the basis and real value of those stereotypes. These doctors, who are clinical psychologists, also point to the sense of identity and community that come along with calling oneself trans. It's likely that many of these young people lack the resources to understand questions like, who am I? And I want to tell them, you're loved and created by God, made in His own image and likeness. And where do I belong? You belong in a community of people who would love you and, yes, like Papa Francis, journey with you, speak the truth. Identifying as trans or gender diverse provides one with almost a almost built-in answers, especially considering the wide array of resources made available through internet and social media. In the second part of their book, which I encourage people to read, it offers practical advice revolving around the theme of pastoral accompaniment. And this posture signifies that we want to understand where a person is, enter into their present experience with them, and yes, commit a journey with them. Most of us, you know, we don't want a journey with people. It's the same thing, it's the same way we treat the poor. I'll hand you $1, but I don't want to sit with you on the pavement. I want to give you advice, but I don't want to journey with you. Papa Francis says, journey, accompany. And what did Jesus do? He left the 99 behind and he went for that one sheep. And he brought that sheep back home. We're called to accompany, to carry that friend on our shoulders. Commit. I would like to ask you to please commit to journey with them. These doctors say we need to throw out the theological considerations, but that we must not exert all our energy into categorizing the morality of gender identity. They continue, even if you think you have all the theological and ethical answers, they recommend pausing to reflect on how to of sharing these theological considerations. How to. They turn to the example of Jesus himself, who struck a balance between asserting moral truths and inviting to a relationship with those who question or even rejected those moral truths. Matthew, I want to come and have dinner by you. Zacchaeus, come down from the tree. I'm coming home by you. They accuse Jesus of supping and liming in our Trinity with sinners and tax collectors. He allowed the woman of ill repute to wash his feet, to dry his feet with her hair. We invite, we should strike a balance between asserting moral truths and inviting the relationship with those who question or even reject the moral truths. This is what Jesus did, the woman at the well. The image of accompaniment upholds the forging of an intimate, trusting relationship rather than articulating and engendering obedience to moral rules as its ideal. I want mercy, not sacrifice. They assert that this reflects the ideal of Christianity more broadly, entering into a relationship with Christ and coming to recognize the truth of one's identity in Him, rather than abstractly applying a set of rules to one's behavior. This begins, my brothers and sisters, and those young people who are journeying with their friends, this begins with listening. Half of the struggle of gender incongruity is feeling that no one understands or wants to care about what you are feeling. They feel alienated. No one wants to listen. Nobody understands what I'm going through. Nobody understands the anxiety. Nobody understands how I feel when I walk into a room and everybody is looking at me as if I am less. You're a son. You're a daughter of God, made in His own image and likeness, and that is how we should see each other. We should be able to watch in each other's eyes despite our struggles and say, I see Jesus in you. I see Jesus in you. Being able to listen to someone's experience doesn't necessarily preclude challenging the conclusions they come to, nor refraining from condemning false doctrines. No, speak the truth. It's a matter of what, how, and when it is said. For example, a priest who is working one on one with a trans teen will want to first establish a foundation of trust before questioning why he or she has chosen to identify themselves that way. Whereas A professor teaching in a theology class is more of a position to critique the false foundations of gender theory while maintaining a sense of sensitivity and respect for those who identify as trans. That being said, the anthropological vision provided by Genesis and the rest of Scripture indicates that the gender binary ought not only be culturally normative, but is a rich source of meaning and beauty within the broader context of God's creation. Male and female, He created them. When it comes down to the decision of whether or not to cross identify, these amazing psychologists recommend counseling teens to wait, since most cases of adolescent gender dysphoria eventually resolves themselves. Don't go and get these surgeries. You're a teen. Don't go and get the hormonal treatment. We see what happens. We see all of the fallout of taking these treatments. Dr. Kritella outlined them. These doctors draw the line at surgical changes in light of such a decision's ethical implications, as well as the research indicating that numerous people who transition eventually will want to identify with their biological sex again. Now, these are two clinical psychologists, right? And their research states that numerous people who transition eventually will want to identify with their biological sex again. So, why do we encourage them to have mastectomies, to remove their penises, to take these puberty blockers, to take these hormones, when the majority will want to transit, who have transitioned, want to identify with their biological sex again? Some of these things are irreversible. Dr. Cretella talked about people, boys and girls experiencing osteoporosis at age 20 when that should be at age 80 or 70. Now, I want you all to hear me. I want you all to hear what I'm about to say because this is critical for all of us. The last and most compelling suggestion offered is developing a robust theology of suffering. The Western culture moves us away and tells us suffering is wrong, that having challenges and having to work through these challenges every single day of our lives is wrong. Christian anthropology recognizes the inherent unity between body and soul. The rupture of unity brought on by gender dysphoria is a source of deep pain and suffering. These doctors lament how the ultra-conservative and liberal approaches downplay one of the most essential aspects of Christianity. What is it? It is the cross. It is the cross. And so for all of us struggle. Each and every one of us, there is no one in here listening to me, no one in here listening to the team that does not have a cross. Our cross might be our relationship with our husbands, our wives, our children, our parents. During COVID, finances. During COVID, the illnesses brought on by the disease. Being an alcoholic, being a drug addict, suffering with some form of addiction. We all have crosses. We all have crosses. But the world wants us to move away from this suffering. You can't get to heaven without the cross. You can't get to heaven without embracing the cross and asking the God who is love and mercy to help you with that cross. And this is what I'm sharing with my brothers and sisters. And this is how we accompany. Let us be like Simeon and help our brothers and sisters carry that cross. These attempts to cover up the messiness of suffering lose sight of Christ Himself. who is certainly not alien to suffering and to the human feeling of being forsaken by God. My God, why have you forsaken me? He Come to Jesus is what I'm telling everybody. He understands exactly what you're going through. He understands feeling feeling abandoned, and he challenges all of us to accompany the abandoned. The Christian community ought not only to pray for, but with those experiencing dysphoria, but carrying the cross together can be a source of enrichment for everybody. Everybody. Everyone in our community, in our parishes, and our social gatherings. Identifying with Christ's suffering body and sharing the cross with him and the rest of the Christian community can become an entryway into some of the elements of identity and community that draws teens. Yes, it draws teens to the trans community in the first place. But if we accompany them, if we welcome them, if we love them, if we have them carry that cross, then it gives them a more beautiful way of dealing with that cross. If we are there to help them. These amazing doctors also note that service to others can be an outlet to cope with the ache of distress. A lot of people suffer with distress, anxiety. The corporal works of mercy can be a meaningful way for people who experience suffering in the body to begin to discover their true identity in Christ. Many of us find that when we wrestle with God, we can enter more fully into the wrestling of others that is inherent to the spiritual life. Becoming more driven to serve them and to find transcendent meaning in the process is critical. Therefore, Catholics striving to be compassionate to a person who identifies as transgender need to see clearly the good for that person according to God's plan. Archbishop spoke about God has a plan for all of us, and it is only in embracing this plan will we truly feel whole, even if we have to carry that cross of same-sex attraction, of gender, of struggling with your gender identity. The Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches that each person should accept his or her sexual identity. 2333. And in Amoris Laetitia, Pope Francis reminds us that our bodies are a gift from the Lord to be received with gratitude. Wow. Our bodies are a gift from God to be received with gratitude from the Lord. Yet, certain doctors, psychologists, what do? They tell our brothers and sisters, go have mastectomies, go remove your penises, go take blockers, right? Puberty blockers. Pope Francis reminds us that our bodies are a gift from the Lord to be received with gratitude from the Lord. And it is not good for a person to assert an identity at odds with the body because we are embodied persons. I want to thank you for this time with me. I see Jackie waving at me and telling me my time is up when I had so much more I wanted to share with you all, but I think I ended right there. This is the perfect ending. Our bodies are a gift from the Lord. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you, Derek. I mean, ending with Pope Francis is saying, this isn't right, And, I just highlight that a comment that someone made. I leave out the two complimentary parts, but they are. This was a very factual conference. I am so, but it is encouraging to hear the views of the church about this, the latest challenge of our times. So, Derek, thank you very much. It's at least the questions are coming, the comments are coming in, and I thought I will share, that someone is happy about us speaking out, as from the church perspective. So we go straight into Q&A. Thank you very, very much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. So you see someone is saying again, wow, so true. Instead of persons using their expertise to help, they are assigning labels to personality traits that can be so otherwise innocent. So, you know, persons are taken from what you're saying, reinforcing Dr. Cotella, it's going great. This is a question for you, though, which I thought is interesting. If the church openly welcomes persons who experience gender dysphoria or questioning their gender, would this social contagion effect cause a spread among the youths within the church? So I guess she's saying, you know, if we have so much acceptance, is it going to cause it coming out in the church because we accept it?
No, I don't think so. And I think that this is why we have to accompany those who are experiencing this challenge. And I want to see more youth in the church. I want to see them coming in because I believe that it is in the sacraments that we are given the strength to be able to carry the cross. It is in encountering Almighty God, this God of mercy, right? What do we want to do? We want to be like the Pharisees and tell them, leave. Doesn't the Lord know who he is speaking with? So I look at it differently. I look at it as um, welcoming and embracing our brothers and sisters and carrying the cross with them. And enforcing. Okay, I want to say this: no one can be born in the wrong body. Let me just leave it that way. And if a person's self-perception conflicts with the reality of the body, then the good is to help the person gain a clearer self-perception, one that aligns with the truth.
Yes.
Right?
Understood. Understood. Thank you. Very well said. It's not that, yes. I just want to say that there's someone hailing us from Canada, Ontario, Canada. Welcome. I know that Grenada is also in the house, but, you know, persons could identify who have joined us. So, Derek, I have a question for you. There seems to be evidence of the, and you may have mentioned it, but to further clarify, there seems to be evidence of correlation between social media and the increase in children identifying as trans. What advice can you give to parents with regard to their children spending time on social media and being so influenced?
I am so glad that you asked me that question because sometimes parents just leave the computers, the smart devices to babysit the children. And they
Yes.
have no idea what is influencing their minds. And the earlier that they have, listen, children are watching pornography. And Dr. Cotella spoke about pornography. Pornography is a huge influence on their minds. And if parents don't play an active role in knowing what their children are looking at, guess what? These predators and these people with agendas will prey on their minds. And the younger they prey on their minds, the more difficult it becomes for them to really have a proper Catholic foundation. I wanted to talk about Catholic education in my presentation, but I couldn't do it. But I'll send you all my PowerPoint presentation so you can share it. But it speaks about the importance of Catholic education in the homes and in our schools, and not just opening up to all of these false doctrines that want to come and influence the minds of our youth and young people.
That's right. That's true. We really have to give them alternatives to this media, is what you're saying, and the right alternatives. Another question, Deacon. With your experience working with young adults, how common in Trinidad and Tobago is the occasion of young people presenting as same-sex attraction? And do any now, with the influence coming through the media, present as identifying as a different gender?
Yes, yes, yes. Because the West has definitely influenced us,
Yes,
right?
that influence comes in.
And where do we get most of our influences from? We're getting most of our influences from the West. And I mentioned in my presentation that it is mainly a Western a Western position, a Western culture, right? And everything that we look at goes to the West.
Right. And as you say, social media. I have another question. Is that a question? Welcoming and acceptance is often seen as accepting all aspects. How do we make this distinction, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ persons?
Well, I think I
Deacon Derek,
mentioned,
I
yes,
see like me, your foot shaking. You're shaking
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
excitement. Go ahead, go ahead.
So I tell people, tread lightly. Who you are speaking with probably knows someone who is confused about gender, or themselves are struggling with it. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. While we should be kind, we should not be cowards. The church has definitive teaching about gender, and we should clearly and fully say the church's teaching on the issue.
Yes,
Keep in mind, speaking the truth is an act of love.
yes, I
And
see.
know
Sorry,
the
go ahead.
facts. Know the facts. I gave five. I gave 5 ways of being able to communicate. Know the facts. Read what the church has actually said about the topic and stick to that. Right? If you do express your own opinion, make sure it's your friend knows it's your opinion and not the church's. And listen, you don't have to feel equipped to speak on the issue, right? Not all of us know the issue, and they are extremely complex. They're extremely complex. So I want to encourage you, read the document released by the Vatican, right? And check out the resources offered by the um, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. It really is a good source. And I have a number of sources that I will send to you all so that you all
Yes,
can share, right? Um, Catholic Answers About Sex, Gender, and Variations in the 21st Century by Life Team, Tips for Talking to Your Friends, Emerging Gender Identities, Understanding the Diverse Experiences of Today's Youth by Dr. Mark Yarhouse and Julia Sadusky, which is what which I referenced quite a lot in my talk.
thank
Right?
you,
But
Deacon.
there's so much. Yeah.
You said it for me. So, Deacon, we were told that, this conference being 3 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours anyway, that we wouldn't get the youth to attend. Those between 18 and 30 will probably not come on. I've seen comments here saying, how do we get this out there? How are we replaying it? From your experience, again, I'm drawing from your experience with working with the youth, and I'm saying not teens, but maybe a little older. How do we get this message out to them? How do we get it into our confirmation classes? How do we get it into our schools? I saw another question asking, how is it affecting the curriculum? Are we too here going to be adopting this kind of ideology?
Lovely question. The first thing is, and I want to take it from my son, who works with me on Shepherd's Corner and develops what we call clips, right? Shepherd's Corner clips. Young people are not going to sit down and listen to a 2.5 hour talk. Let's get this right. So, what he has developed using Shepherd Corner clips is just 3 minute bite sections of important points which they can identify with. TikTok is 30 seconds, right? And we have so many of the youth on TikTok. So we need to take sessions like these and create little TikTok sessions, little 30-minute, the 30-second bites, little 3-minute bites, and get it out to the children in confirmation classes. Yes, in First Communion classes, right? In our school's curriculum, education is critical, and I think that we don't play enough emphasis on education, right? Um, and I'll just end there. Education, education, education.
Well, Deacon, where we leave gaps, they fully filling them in. So if we're not educated, the kind of education that they get it. So we need to, a
Yeah.
takeaway needs to be educated. So I see another question. These topics should really be spoken about more to the youth in schools, in faith formation classes. I'm so grateful for this seminar. So it's really, really a comment. I thought it ended in a question, but it's really a comment. But let me put this to you and see what is your perspective, maybe more comments. So we see the attacks on the dignity of the human person coming down. You know, it started, or when I say it started, abortion has been put forth by the church that there's perhaps nothing worse than taking innocent life, as Jesus' innocent life was taken as well. So, you know, the church has that at the forefront. But robbing the dignity of life does not stop with abortion. I think this transgender, even not more so, but equally perhaps, robs the person of their human dignity by denying who God made them as. I am who I am, as original. Any comments on the satanic attack? So, because somebody was asking, is this postmodernism? Is this progressivism? And a response was no. This is just plainly Satanism and Luciferism. So, your comments about these trends taking away the dignity of life.
Well, it go right back to the Garden of Eden. Did God really say that if you eat of the fruit in the middle of the garden, you will surely die? And so um, we have Satan tricking our societies, tricking our children, tricking our youth into feeling that yes, they can be like gods. They will experience no more pain, no more anxiety, no more they will not experience the cross. And
Deception.
that's what our Western culture wants, So we're running away from the cross, right? And we all have crosses to bear. But I want Catholics and people listening to me get behind the vision of Catholic education. It is never more urgent than today. Public schools, private schools are awash in gender ideology in our Catholic schools. They are
Oh,
teaching a view of the human person utterly incompatible with Christian anthropology. The truth of the person revealed in Jesus Christ and proclaimed by his church. Get behind the vision of Catholic education. And this goes to all those who run Catholic schools
yes,
and run